Hi everybody. There are exactly two types of people in the world. Those of you who believe that humans, their thought processes, and their decisions can easily be packaged into a couple categories, and those who don't. I'm not sure which John Nash was, but in 1950 he published his PhD dissertation in mathematics, and granted pure mathematics, which was not supposed to have any application to real-world things. And he proved an important result in what was then a budding field called game theory. In 1994, he won the Nobel Prize in Economics, which is basically what pure mathematicians call applied math. It's a dirty word, so I wouldn't need to say it outside the room. Anyway, why the delay? Why did it take 44 years between some 28-page thesis he made and a Nobel Prize and millions of dollars? Well, it took that long for people to realize the economic and social implications of his work, or so they think. And that's what I'm here to talk about today. Some of the implications of game theory, and why some of the implications that we think are implications of game theory aren't actually useful to us. And to do that, we first have to describe what is a game. A mathematical game has players that can make decisions, they can choose strategies, events can happen, and you can have outcomes. You notice all of those are technical terms, but they're also real-world terms. We recognize those things from, say, international relations, where our players could be nations, and the decisions they can make can be, things like global summits or negotiations. It can also be wars, where the players are belligerents. Their strategies are whether to attack or defend, or where to attack. In fact, in 1952 or something, a couple years after Nash's paper, a corporal from the US Army, O.G. Haywood, published some paper about, hey, in World War II we were doing game theory, we just didn't know it was called game theory. And so my first talking point is, what can we do with game theory? Why could it potentially be useful to us? And it turns out that if you have a really complex situation that has a lot of players, and every player has a really large set of possible strategies, and they can all make tons of choices, it's possible to whittle away all of the unnecessary strategies or the bad strategies very quickly. I don't want to bore you with this, but it's all can be reduced to a convex optimization problem, which was kind of solved concretely by this guy named Nander Karmakar, I believe, in 1984 while he was working for Bell Labs. And so basically, if you have a player that has a set of decisions that they can make and a set of outcomes that can possibly happen, and they can assign a utility value or some value to any particular outcome, you can feed all of their numbers into a computer, and the computer will spit out, hey, they should only consider this set of 5 strategies rather than their whole set of 5 bets. How do I know that they can do this? I did it. That was my summer work last year, was coming up with a really fast algorithm to whittle away excess strategies. So great, we can help people make better decisions, right? But when the computer is telling us what the most effective strategies are, what tacit assumptions is it making that might not necessarily hold in the real world? The first is an assumption of rationality. Game theory is based on the fact that players will always act in their best interest and will always make decisions that are somehow self-consistent. An example of a time where this failed was actually discovered by the New York Times. They played a game with over 60,000 readers. And the goal of the game, everyone was going to submit a number, and the winners of the game were those who guessed 2/3 of the average of everyone's guess. Well, the only steady state scenario where everyone could win would be if every single reader entered 0. Because then the average is 0, 2/3 of the average is 0, everybody picked 0, they all win. However, people put in a lot of different numbers, and the winning answer was 19, which is not a rational solution as John Nash, the beautiful mind, would call it. So already, even in just 60,000 people, we've seen a deviation of human behavior from rational behavior. Another issue we have with game theory is if we want to, create some matrix with all of these numbers that we want to feed into a computer, we need to be able to know what the numbers are. And that requires a very well-refined concept of value. For my Power 2 class, I did an investigation of the Iran nuclear deal. And I thought I was doing a really cool thing to be like, I'm going to go game theory on this. I did it last summer. I know what I'm doing. I have the algorithm. It's going to be great. And you have to come up with some unit that can quantify both a ton of money, say the $100 billion that are going to be freed up for Iran on implementation day, and the value of a nuclear weapon to Iran. Those are apples and oranges. You can't necessarily compare them unless you know the psychology of every player in the game and what their values are and what their preference structure is. That's not necessarily possible. However, I do want to leave you with some bit of hope for game theory because I don't want my summer work to be completely irrelevant. It can still be very useful as long as your assumptions of rationality and a good understanding of every player's value structure are reasonable assumptions. And that's not too far-fetched. That can happen in business negotiations. It's pretty obvious that everyone wants money and jobs. And it's not a terribly big leap to quantify those things. And also, you'd hope that if you're hiring some Wall Street financial analyst, they'd be making a pretty rational decision that's consistent with their self-interest. So while game theory might not be the best predictor of human events, and it might not be the best way to look into the human mind, it's not completely useless. It just requires us to be cognizant of what assumptions we're making and how people are going to behave rather than just players. Thank you very much.